Hey everybody, it's Lisa with Quilting in the Valley. We are here for QITV Season 2, and today's episode we are going to feature Jill Shaulis from Yellow Creek Quilt Designs. She's going to do a trunk show of her work and talk about her journey through quilting. And then we're going to do Good, Better, Best with some cutting mats and finish up Lessons with Lisa with some Y-seam blocks. You do not need to be afraid of Y-seams. Let's get to it. Welcome everybody, this is Jill Shaulis from Yellow Creek Quilt Designs. She has got a shop in Pearl City, Illinois, which is about halfway to Galena if you're coming from Chicago. Well, more than halfway if you're coming from Chicago. But if you're coming from, say, Rockford, it's about halfway to Galena. Neat place to go, so you want to check out her shop if you ever go out to Galena. She also designs fabric for the Robert Kaufman Company, and she is going to show us a little bit of her design aesthetic as well as her fabrics and talk to us about how she got into this.
All right. Well, I am so excited to be here. I've seen Lisa's things before, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you.
I love what I do, and it started a long time ago. When I was little, my mom and my grandma taught me how to sew. As things progressed and I learned how to sew more complicated things, my sisters helped, and my mom and my grandma and helped me along that journey.
Wonderful.
When I was in high school, I didn't know if I wanted to teach phys ed or art. I knew I wanted to teach, and I went with the college that gave me the most money. So I taught phys ed for several years, and obviously art was in there somewhere. And there was a lack of, just waiting
to get out.
And teaching. So I'm still doing art, I'm still teaching, and I love it all. Our small town didn't have much in the area as far as quilt shops.
No,
so we decided, my sister and I, that it would be a great thing to open and get started. My colleagues thought I was absolutely crazy leaving the teaching field, but I have not regretted a day of it. And my sister was a great help and a part of the company for a long time, and now it's my husband and I.
That's fun too.
It is.
If you can put up with him.
Yes.
Just kidding.
He's very, no, this one's a good one.
All right then.
This one is a good one.
That's good.
So I almost started designing patterns right away because there was a need in my shop.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I filled that need, not knowing that was the path I was going to go. Yeah. It led on to books. It led on to being asked to design fabric, and it brought me to today and all kinds of different things.
Look at all this stuff.
So, like a lot of crafters, I have what my children call squirrel moments, in that I like this, and then I like this, and I like this technique. So I bounce around to a lot of different
techniques.
things.
And that's what makes this fun, you guys. Try different things. The more different things you try, the more you're going to find out that you really love. If you never try it, you'll never discover what you really love. So I will note that your style tends to skew towards the
Civil War reproductions. I just like the feel, the warmth, the history of all of it. A lot of people have made my things in what I'll call Lisa tones, and it looks fabulous. So don't be real tunnel vision that the design itself and the fabrics need to be locked into a certain fabric style.
I can see this in batiks. Sure.
Yes. Yep.
Or even that one there would be pretty in batiks. Yeah. Any of these could be translated into aqua.
Yes, and I just won't be doing them. Lisa will be doing them. So,
but we're here to look at your stuff.
All right. So. When I started designing patterns, the hardest thing to find for me was affordable block of months.
Sure.
So I started designing them myself because I couldn't find them. Then other shops asked for them. So thus was the launch
and that's
of
what
the
this
fabric
one
company.
is?
Yes.
Block of the month?
Yep, it could be done that way, but I also make the patterns affordable so that they can be sold after. When block of months first came out, they were so expensive that after the block of month was over, a shop couldn't afford to sell them because the pattern was so
crazy expensive. And some of them still are.
They are, but I just didn't see the need for that. So this one is one that could be a standalone or
That's a good point, though. I think a lot of people don't know that. So we're going to do an educational moment here.
Sounds great.
So when you look at a block of the month from any of your local quilt shops or online quilts, whoever you're looking at, you're going to go, well, why is that so expensive? It's the pattern. The pattern's cost. So you're, in effect, paying for a pattern every month. So that's what drives the cost of block of the months. It isn't because the shop or whatever, online store, whatever, is trying to, gouge you out of more money. It's because the pattern is expensive.
Very, very good.
Okay.
Very good. I moved on to English paper piecing that I never ever thought that I would do. I was at a show that the weather got bad unexpectedly, and the booth beside me was paper pieces, doing English paper piecing. I had gone through everything I had brought along to do. So then I caught the bug of English paper piecing. So I start out by thread basting it to a piece of cardboard. Then I hand stitch them together, and I can remove the cardboard once it's surrounded by other pieces.
Right.
And the dense quilting helps hold that together, especially when I travel and use it. And
what size are these?
Those are half-inch ones, half-inch. And you always measure the hexagons by the side.
The edge.
So it's a half-inch piece. Keepsake Quilting commissioned me to do this larger project for their magazine after they had seen my smaller versions that are 3/8 inch and even a smaller one that is 1/4 inch. And they wanted something larger for their project. And I'm sure Lisa's going to try the 3/16 size next.
Yeah, maybe not so much. Those are very small.
They are, I call them the fun size. Like at Halloween when you get the little package of something, it's the fun size.
And it looks like you thread-based.
I do thread-based. So there's still threads around the outside edge that won't be taken out until the edge is finished.
Sure. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, what do we have going on over here?
This one is one that was inspired by an antique quilt that I bought. I am not big on pink, so that didn't resonate with me, but I like the warmth and the richness of a brown or a black. So I just changed it up, and this looks like it could be so complicated, and really it's almost even a beginner's quilt because it's only made up of an hourglass section, plain squares from your scraps, and that's it. It's set on point. So it's one of those things that looks difficult. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You get to purchase new fabric, and you get to use some from your stash.
There you go. You get a secondary design going on in there. So if you look at this block like it was an Ohio Star, you kind of get that. And if you turn it the other way, you get even like a square and square block. So there's all kinds of secondary designs coming out of that.
Well, and sometimes I think when you look at it and you see the lighter blocks, it looks like something's turned wrong, but it's not. But it's not. So it's one to keep looking at.
Yeah, neat. All right, what do we have in here?
When we first started our journey, we were in the Quilt Sampler magazine, which was really exciting.
Sister.
Yes. And this was the project we had designed for it. And unbeknownst to us, when you do a magazine, you get to kind of give it a name, but then in the end, they choose a name. So we had given it a name of Edna Jane, which is our mom, and she got it all started. But then they changed it to Cross and Crown, which did not seem as homey and warm to us. So when the rights of it came back to us, like it does in a magazine, we went back to Edna Jane. We went back to Edna Jane.
Yep, they changed ours too.
Yeah, so. They have that right to do that.
Yeah.
I like smaller projects. When I first started designing fabric with Wyndham, we did club things, and this was one of the small projects. I love flying geese. They're just one of my favorite things to do, and stars. So you'll see those resonating through a lot of things.
Tiny little 1/4 square triangles in there.
Again, I do like small. More English paper piecing that was included in our second book, Simple Blessings. And this is something to show you that you don't have to do a huge project. This is just applique onto a piece of wool. So if you want just a taste of something, you'd be able to give it a try and have a project when you're done.
Nice little table mat. Okay.
I'm not big on fabric applique, but I do like it every now and then. And this could be a great thing for Lisa to show. I had a terrible time with top stitch thread and changing my needle. So I ran 2 50-weight threads through and did a buttonhole stitch. My machine liked it better. Maybe it was just my machine. But I got the same result, and I didn't have the headaches that I had.
I will tell you a little secret. Our Berninas have a built-in double blanket stitch where it doubles it else by itself.
Oh, see, I knew she'd have a great solution, much better than my wonky solution. So great idea. She'll talk to you about that and make it look just like that.
Okay.
I then kind of moved into wool applique, and I like to join wool with fabric. This is kind of the size that they like to have.
I hope you guys can see how dimensional that is.
Yeah, it really, that wool just adds a whole different texture to to it all.
That's fun. That'd be neat as a wall hanging. Well, of course, got a hang thing on it.
So
there
you
go.
do seasonal things. That one's a fall one. So, of course, I had to do a winter one. And then people say, well, where is the spring or the summer one? And I'm like, well, someday. Too many squirrel moments. Too many squirrel moments.
Well, this could be spring.
Yep. So I did some for the trays that you've maybe seen, the metal trays. This was in honor of a dear friend of ours that passed away far too soon. She rode a red bike. She died of pancreatic cancer, so the purple tulips, and she loved cats. Well, not everyone loves cats, so I also gave you the option to change the dog up. And then I did a fall version of the same thing. And again, doing them on a different texture background instead of wool
this
gives
is like
it a lot of dimension, but it doesn't add the cost that wool does.
This is like an upholstery fabric. A drapery fabric, something, home deck fabric.
And a winter one. So there are 3 seasons, but I really tell you there are 4 because spring and summer go together.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
more things for the club. Again, I start with something small, but I also offer it usually in the same pattern as a larger project as well. I know everyone doesn't feel as comfortable with small as they do larger pieces, so it gives you a stepping stone, or it makes that pattern useful for you.
Fun. Okay.
Harriet's Pioneer Braid. This has an awesome story to it. I met Harriet years and years ago. She taught this class. She's an amazing teacher. There are no Y seams in this project. So they're all partial seams, and it was an amazing construction, but she only taught it in a class. She never put it in pattern form. So I contacted her and asked her permission and compensated her for putting it actually into pattern form. And she offered it in multiple sizes. So in order to honor her, I felt I needed to do the same thing. So this was the larger one.
Oh my goodness, look at how small.
This is the one she said she made one of and she'd never make another. Well, I had to make it. I had to make it. So this one is a little challenging, I will say. The others are very simple.
That one's tiny.
Another medium size. You know, this makes a great baby quilt. So if you have baby fabrics or those batiks, this would be a good one in those as well.
Yep.
Another quick project in the same pattern is just a table runner.
Now that makes a nice table runner. That's a good one for a table runner.
I think every quilt has stories, and our life becomes the story of our quilts. The next group of them here were done as a series when my fabric line came out with Robert Kaufman called Making Memories. So these all have to do with my grandchildren. So this one is my grandson Knox, and I called it Blocks for Knox. There are 3 stars in here, one to represent each of my adult children. So you can make it your own. Include as many stars as you have children, grandchildren. Make this quilt have your story.
Yeah, kind of a hidden little treat to find.
This one encompasses all of them, it's called Cross My Heart. This is just a block that I saw in an antique quilt that I just fell in love with.
It's almost Carolina Lily-ish.
But it's got its own little spin.
Other stuff going on, yeah. Cool.
This one is called Ian's Song. We all wish we had more time, right?
Yeah.
If I had more time, I would have loved to make this much, much bigger. But we all have deadlines, and sometimes the fabric companies are a little strict on their deadlines.
Yes, they are.
This is for my granddaughter Eden, and it's from Eden's Garden. So just a nice, quick, easy table runner. Notice the pieces are a little larger.
So you made mention of the fabric companies and their deadlines. So why don't you tell people a little bit about that? So when you have a fabric line that comes out, you have to make samples for it.
That's right. And you don't get the fabric until almost last minute because they don't want to be sitting on that for a long
Sure.
time. They can't put the expense of printing all the fabric and having it sitting there. So sometimes you're fortunate enough to have 2 whole months, and that is the fortunate end of it.
And how many projects do you have to make?
Well, it's up to you, but the more that you have, the more that you sell, the
Right.
more that people want to
Sure.
see. So these are smaller projects. I've gone to larger projects to do fewer of them, but bigger.
Yeah.
This is for my granddaughter, Hadley Bell.
Got some pink in there.
It does have pink. I'm glad you noticed. This is Blocks, or not his brother. This is Kade, and this is Kade's Crossing. And I love this pattern because it meshes one into the next.
Yes.
And it's not done as a traditional block. It's actually done as pieces so
Very
that it all
subtle.
comes together.
Where it goes, this very subtle.
This one shows it off just a little bit more. Again, 2 sizes in the same pattern so that somebody doesn't get freaked out by the little. I also like smaller block a months. Sometimes shops or myself, you don't want to run something for 12 months.
Right.
So this is one that gets people started maybe on smaller, more basic blocks. So these are 6-inch blocks, and you wouldn't have to run it as long. But again, the pattern is priced so that you could sell it after too.
Right.
Can you not see this as a baby quilt?
Yes. Yes. One that was going to be taken care of.
Yes. Yeah, they don't all get that,
No,
do they?
they don't.
They don't. This is for the most recent line of fabric. It's called Mill Pond.
There's 2
So
of them.
these 2 are just 2 different colorways.
What is it? This way.
And it doesn't matter. It's just that I didn't get the sleeve,
Oh.
so it was flopping around. So this is Spooling Around. Just 2 different colorways from the same fabric line.
Okay.
I like to do things scrappy, but when I design fabric, I also like to do little groupings within. So people can pull planned fabrics if they're not scrappy people. So there's enough variety for it to be
Yeah.
scrappy, but also things that you can pull in there to make it planned. This is called Honeybees. This line was called Mill Pond, and it revolved around a pond that I used to go ice skating at when I was growing up. This is Gather Round, because we would gather around the campfire while we were there.
2
Just
sizes.
a simple 2 color and 2 different sizes.
Yeah. Cool.
Another
All right.
technique I thought I would never ever do is hand piecing, which is different than English paper
Yes.
piecing. You still have a template to trace, but you have no foundation or cardboard that goes inside. We had a lady come from Australia, Karen Stiles, and teach it, and I got hooked. I got so hooked. So I designed this project, and Paper Pieces that we talked about earlier also does acrylic templates.
Sure.
So they made acrylic templates for me for this project, and this is called Gold Rush.
Nice. So the very first quilting class I took in my freshman year of college. And that was the time where there were no rotary cutters. You took cardboard and you traced your templates and then you scissor cut everything, and it was a cardinal sin to machine piece anything. So my first quilt was hand pieced.
Yeah, and
That was
isn't it
my
amazing?
last quilt that was hand pieced.
Isn't it amazing though how accurate people were when that was what they had to use? It
You had
was
a lot
just
of fudging
amazing.
you could do with that. Yeah.
We have another designer with Robert Kaufman for, they're just getting into Civil War reproductions. So Lisa, Julie Letvin has designed a line of fabric. So I combined mine with hers to show you how nicely they play together. And I threw in just a little wool because that's just what
And
I
that
like
just
to do.
that really adds something to this. That's very pretty.
And not everyone likes dark. So I also did it as a light background.
Nice.
And then I also did it as just a wool on fabric that you could frame.
That's pretty. Very nice.
The last projects I'm going to show you is so exciting because this is like the first group to really see these in person.
Oh.
This fabric line is called Henderson Street because that's
Okay.
where I was born when I grew up. So it all tells the story again. And this will be in stores the end of August, the 1st of September.
Of this year.
Of this year.
2021.
And the patterns will be available later this summer.
Okay.
This is called Main Street, the last street that I lived on as a teenager and college. So it's just a nice table runner. Again, pulling a collection of fabrics that play nice together that's not scrappy.
Very rich blue. Okay.
This one, since my granddaughter, Emily, was not born yet when my other ones came out, I did one for her. So this is Diamonds for Emily. 60-degree cuts, but it's still strip pieced.
Right.
So great learning tool with rulers.
You hear that, people? Experiment.
Yes.
Try some new things.
Yes.
You'll never know what you'll fall in love with.
Now, this one is a little challenging, I will say.
Okay.
Mostly because of the size of the pieces.
Yes, that's small.
And the same thing, I would have loved to make this much, much larger. And I wouldn't have even gotten this far, but my friends, other designer friends that were helping me sew at a retreat, helped me actually sew. All of these, otherwise I've sewn myself. So they helped me sew, and especially my friend Becky. So this is called Baskets with Becky.
Nice. Okay. And
And the
that is
last-
also the new fabric line.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is. And this one is as well. This is the last one from that fabric line.
Okay.
And this is that star that might look familiar from earlier from my Edna Jane, because I love this star. I love this star. So what I did here is I pulled out the different color groupings that are in that line, but I made it scrappy. So you can look at each block and see, oh, that would be a good color combination all on its own.
Sure.
But then they all fit well together too.
Right. Hence the fabric line.
Yes. But I don't like to do just a color scheme
Right.
when I do my fabrics, because if somebody doesn't like blue, they're not going to want to buy it if the whole
Right.
thing is blue. And it's hard to do scrappy things when it's all just one
Yes.
color
Yes, it is.
line. So variety is a spice of life, whether it's design, pattern, fabric. I encourage people to stretch.
Now, this one notwithstanding, I did notice that you have fairly dense quilting in most of them. So, for example, we'll see if we
Yep,
can
this
maybe
one
get
is
a
still-
close-up of this. So you've got pretty dense quilting here.
And
This one is
as
pretty
well.
densely done.
Well, and-
really, that one is.
Part of the reason that is I love stippling. And I think that dense stippling gives it an old kind of look.
Yes.
But here's the crux of the whole thing. That's all done by hand, and I travel with it a lot. This is all small pieces, and I travel with it a lot. It needs to hold up.
So it adds stability to your pieces, is what you're saying. So
Yes.
that's a good pointer.
It's a good thing to think about when you're choosing what is the project going to be used for? How should
Absolutely.
I quilt it?
Okay, well, that's interesting. Cool. All right, so this fabric line was named again what?
Henderson Street,
And it is out in?
the end of August, 1st of September, it will be in stores.
It will be in, and of course, it will be in your store.
It will, and it will soon be on my website with the patterns to pre-order.
Okay,
But
and-
everything before these is available right now.
And your website is?
www.yellowcreekquiltdesigns.com.
That's a is, designs. So
Designs, there are lots of them.
we'll flash it on the screen for you.
Sounds good. Sounds
All right.
good.
Well, thanks for showing us your
Yeah.
stuff. This was a great trunk show. There's a lot of really neat stuff in here, and I hope we showed some people some different things. Think about trying something new, guys.
Thanks for
Okay.
having me.
Thanks. So we're going to talk about cutting mats today. This is another example of something that you really need to invest in to make sure that you have the best value product that's going to provide you with the best results. And when I talk about value, you want to get something that's going to last. So yes, you can get a cutting mat for $20. Your cutting mat that you get for $20, you're going to replace very quickly, or it's going to give you some poor results. So you're going to dull your rotary blades, you're going to not be accurate in your cuts because you're going to have grooves in it, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to make sure that you get a nice balance between longevity, accuracy, and price to get the best value for your money. So here is one that I'm going to cover up the name, but this is from a chain store. We don't actually carry these. I'm going to let you just listen to the sound of this. That ought to tell you how brittle and thin this mat is. It does not say that it's self-healing. What that means is every time you make a cut, you're digging away at the surface of this until eventually you're not going to be able to make a straight cut. It also is a very rigid, hard material, which is going to cause damage to your blades. Okay, so let's put that aside. We're not going to get that one because it's not going to give you value. Let's look at this one. This is one, it's not quite as rigid. It is, however, very thin, and it's single-sided. And it also does not say that it is self-healing, which means because it's so thin, you need the thicker mats with the rubber in them to be self-healing. So this one is really thin. It's not going to be self-healing, so you're going to get those grooves in it quicker. This mat runs, depending on where you get it and whether it's on sale or not, this mat's going to run you $30 to $40, even up to $50, depending on where you buy it. And it's not going to last you. The other thing with this mat is you leave this in the sun once and it's ruined. It will bubble up and it will never lie flat again. So if you're taking one to retreats and you only use it once in a while, this is a nice mat for that. For your home mat, the one that you use a lot, let's talk about some higher quality products that are worth the investment. So this is a Martelli mat. Martelli is a company out of Florida. This is rubber, and you can see this is actually very heavy. It is double-sided. So if and when you get to the point where you have grooves on the front, you just flop it over to the other side, and now you use this side. I can take this mat, and I can go like that, and it's going to lie flat again. They actually roll these to ship them. This is a very nice mat, and it's not going to crack on you. It's not going to bubble up and never get its shape back. And it will last a very long time because it is a self-healing mat. And it does say that up here. Okay. Last one I'm going to show you is another brand. This is Precision Quilting Tools. This is also a self-healing mat. And you'll notice it's that nice thick, heavy thickness. And it is double-sided. And you'll notice this one and this one have different colors on the two sides, and that is for when you're cutting different colors of fabric to make it easier. So you probably wouldn't cut a black fabric on this, but you cut a black fabric on this side. So they make it so that you can flip it over to use to get the best view, which is kind of cool too. And again, this one, you can tell it's not going to crack. It's got nice bounce to it. It's heavy, it's double-sided, and it is self-healing. You can tell that this one has got rubber on it. The other thing I do want to mention about the difference between the mats is these, the markings are rolled on them. So there's a roller that comes through and puts all these on there. If you take a ruler on this, it may or may not line up with the measurements on the mat. The same with the first one I showed you. These are stamped. So if you take a ruler and you line it up with this, you're going to find that your ruler is identical to the markings on the mat. So that's why a lot of people tell you not to measure using your mats, to always measure using your ruler, because the mats aren't always accurate. These are accurate, and you can always check that with your ruler. Check your mats at home, see what you have, and see if they're accurate. That may be causing some issues if you're having problems getting your pieces to come out right. It could be because you're using the mat and the measurements are wrong. So invest in the best quality mat that you can. Get one that's going to last. It's going to provide you with the best results. We do this because we want to have fun. So make sure that you get the stuff that makes the job fun. Thanks. Okay, we are going to talk about Y seams today. Some of the most beautiful quilts, so some of your Lone Stars, some of your really, you look at it and you're like, oh, wow, that's gorgeous. They're made with Y seams, and a lot of people stay away from them because they're afraid of Y seams. There's no reason to fear the Y seam. I'm going to show you. So I'm going to use a creative grid ruler right here. This is the 60-degree diamond mini. And the only reason I'm using this is because this is going to give you a couple of diamonds. We're going to make what basically is a tumbling block. I remember my mom made a tumbling block baby quilt when I was a kid, and she hand pieced it. Of course, Y seams are much easier when you're hand piecing. I'm going to show you how to make it just as easy when you're machine piecing. So on this particular ruler, there are little holes right at your 1/4-inch seam allowance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler on my piece of fabric, line it up, and I am going to mark that seam intersection right there. And that is where my 1/4-inch seam is. So the key to the Y seam is to sew in to the 1/4-inch seam allowance, then pivot and sew back out. And the only way you can do that other than eyeballing it is to mark it. If your ruler, whatever ruler you're using, if you're using a straight ruler with the angled lines on it, you can certainly do that too to cut these types of pieces. Then you're just going to use a 1/4 inch ruler, or not 1/4 inch ruler, a ruler, and mark these pieces yourself. So I have got those seam intersections marked now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 2 sides and I'm going to put them together. And I am going to sew with my 1/4 inch seam. Well, if I can get my foot pedal out, I will. There. I'm going to sew to my 1/4 inch seam up to that mark. And I'm actually going to take a little bit of a back step from that mark. So I know right where I'm stopping. I'm at that quarter line. And then I'm going to press these seams open. So when you're doing these types of seams, it is always better to do them open. I'm going to put the pin through my mark. And I'm going to go over here and I am going to put my pin through my mark on the other side. And now I know that I'm lined up just perfectly with that seam. And I know where my stop is. And now I'm going to just finish pinning that together. So I know where I'm stopping. I'm going to start here. I actually don't need to leave that pin there once I get started. And I'm going to go right up to and take a little back step to that mark. And now all I have to do is pivot that piece over and match that mark going the other way. And you can see my mark right there. So I'm going right to that mark. And I'm going to take a couple back steps. And voila. Let me press my seam so you can see that. So this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. And this is one of those things where you can fudge a little. So I got one seam. I'll go do the other one. And I'm doing these seams open again, just so I don't have the bulk in that corner. If I did them to one side or the other, we would have quite a bit of bulk coming together in the corner. But there, my friends, is a Y seam. That is easy. So you can do a Lone Star. You're just going to mark all those intersections. So to that 1/4 inch line, take a back step, pivot, sew back in, to that line, take a back step. And then poof, you have a Y seam, easy peasy. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed Jill and her creation. She had some beautiful work. I hope you learned a little bit about Y seams. And now I'm going to give you a heads up on our next episode. We are going to be doing this quilt right here. We're calling it our Kaleidoscope Pineapple. It uses another of the Creative Grids rulers that make this just simple as all get out to do. So this is our next tutorial. Our next episode will be all about how to use that Creative Grids ruler to make this quilt. And of course, our first 2 episodes of this season were all about how to use the Creative Grids Log Cabin Trim Tool Duo to make the Geese in the Cabin quilt. So I want to remind you that those are still up and available at quiltinginthevalley.com. And those 2 episodes are always going to be available for you to look and figure out how to make that quilt. Next time is going to be this one. See you then.